So, welcome to this new episode of Gracing. And as you all are aware, the gravel season 2024 is in the books. It's over. But we didn't want to be quiet until there is a new season. And there is one thing that people do enjoy a lot in many other sports, and we wanted to bring it to gravel, and that is post-season awards. You know, most valuable, most improved, and so on and so forth. And of course, giving out awards is something that you need to do, being qualified. And that is why I'm definitely not going to do it alone. And I'm joined today by two excellent people to have on board to hand out season or post-season awards. And first is Amanda Naumann. If I did butcher your name, then please correct me right now. But you definitely heard her voice before if you have anything to do with gravel. She's the host of the Grodio podcast. She's a two-time Unbound winner. And I mean, the Palmares are much longer. Amanda, great to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And my last name is German, so if anyone's going to pronounce it right, it's you two. So however you would say it, that's the right way to say it.
Cool. Glad that we figured that one out. And well, alongside Amanda, of course, we have Paul Voss in the house as well. Hi, Paul.
Hello. Nice to be back. Hey, Amanda. And okay, so you say, but do you say it also Naumann? Do you say it the German way, or do you have it like in an English version?
It depends who I'm talking to. I think a lot of times I'll just say Naumann because it's easier, but my dad says Naumann, so yeah.
Okay, sweet. Nice. So do you actually have German, how you say it in English? Heritage? And do you say heritage? No, you don't say heritage.
Yeah, I would say heritage. Yeah, my dad's, there's German somewhere in there, so yeah.
Okay, yep. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So cool that there is some shared German origin, even though everything is going to be in English for this show here. Let's probably take everybody a bit through the format so you know what to expect. So we defined a handful of awards to award to the riders, the male and the female riders that we think demand special attention and performed very well in the respective regard. Every one of us is going to pick their winners and explain a bit of the reasoning for this. But obviously, as we are three people, there might be a non-conclusive outcome because we probably didn't pick our winners and favorites. And that is where you, the listeners, will come in the aftermath, because we decided that we will put, after this podcast went live, all our top picks up for a voting where you, the community, the outside listeners, can then pick the eventual winner based on our shortlist that we are creating here. So yeah, unless of course we all pick the same winner in any one category, then voting will not make a lot of sense. So that's for the process. Let's start with the first award, most improved rider. So for many of these categories, we also defined a bit of guidelines what to look at. But most improved is actually, especially in a sport like gravel, not that straightforward, because we don't have like one league that we are looking at. Like in the NBA, you at least know who to take a look at. And it would have been easier if we would have said, let's look at most improved in one specific series, like the Lifetime Grand Prix or Gravel Earth Series or so. But we said, no, let's pick from all riders where we saw improvement. So it's actually pretty non-restrictive. And as you're the special guest today, Amanda, take us through your short list of female and male riders.
Yeah, so I think, like you said, it's going to be open to everyone. So who knows how our picks are going to go across with me leaning maybe more American and you guys maybe leaning a little bit more international. But I will kick it off with this one and say my most improved rider compared to last season is Payson McElveen. I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. He did finish 12th overall in the Grand Prix, so it wasn't crazy, but I know that that's not where his expectations are. And so I think not just an improvement from a number standpoint of where he finished overall in the Grand Prix, but also I would say mentally, because I think he had a big struggle in 2023. And for him to be able to come out and have really great results in 2024, it was just a really fun story, and I think something that a lot of people could cheer for, because he is somebody that traditionally you would expect to be up there, and finally was able to fulfill that, I think, in 2024. So that's my men's pick. My female pick is Cecily Decker, another American. She went from not even being in the Grand Prix in 2023 and then ended up finishing 6th overall this year, and she had a great back half of the season and sort of found herself in the lead women's group in a lot of races, which surprised a lot of people because she was such an unknown contender. So yeah, those are my two picks. Cecily coming from basically out of nowhere, and Payson sort of just living up a little bit more to our expectations.
Who did the two fight with on your list? Who was on your short list as well?
Oh, Alex Wild for the men. Yeah, he's sort of my backup pick if you guys had also picked Payson. He DNF'd the Grand Prix in 2022 and he was not invited in 2023. And then this year he had another great string of results and ended up finishing 7th overall in the Grand Prix. So another rider on the men's side that I think people were excited to see just sort of, show what they were capable of.
Lovely. So far we have nothing in common in terms of picks. So that is exciting. But Paul, I will pass it to you.
Yeah. So my pick on the men's side is an American European, and it's even for me hard to pronounce his name right. But Torbjorn André Rødt. I hope you guys know who I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The Norwegian rider, actually, I think he's living in the US, and I don't know exactly where, but I just saw that he spends most of the time over there. And I saw him having quite a few good results last year, but for me this year, the results were more consistent, but also not just in the US, but also in Europe. When he came over for his big European block, he was quite well at the UCI World Gravel Series races here in preparation for the Worlds. So yeah, he is my pick on the men's side. And on the women's side, is it Caroline Migon? Migon?
Yeah, I think it's Migon.
Yeah, the Polish rider. And yeah, she won Tracker 360 this year. She won 2 UCI World Gravel Series races. And for me, that was like on a European perspective, a big step forward on the women's side.
I do have Carolina on another list as a little spoiler. So yeah, then let me jump into my selection for the most improved category. On the women's side, let's start there. I had Cecily Decker on my list as well, but she's only on my short list. And also Melissa Rowland's a name that I wanted to mention and considered here, because Melissa really, especially with winning Leadville and then having a great performance at Big Sugar, I think she's like one of the up and comers, even though she's not that young and not so new to cycling, but still really impressive results this season. But eventually there was a German name that ended up on my list, and that is Rosa Klöser, who started famously gravel racing, I believe, like 2 years ago. Then last year had the first proper season, and this year won Unbound. And I think that is if not the second most, we could argue, with Gravel Worlds, the UCI Gravel Worlds version, which is the most significant race to win, but definitely a standout win, basically as a up and comer. That was who ended up on my winners list for most improved. And then on the men's side, I also had a few names up there, but none in common. So to me, Matt Beers on the men's side, because I think it was the second time, if not even the third time, that he rode the Lifetime Grand Prix. Definitely improved his result a lot this year. And I also recall some interview. Was it even on the Grodio show? Did you have him recently as a guest? Somewhere? No. Yeah, I don't know where, but in an interview, he mentioned how he changed his entire approach to traveling less, staying longer in the US, because obviously being like a South African rider, this was quite a struggle. I think, Paul, you also know the struggles of racing in the US quite well. The second name on my list is, I guess, also from a German perspective, Frederik Rassmann, German rider who seemed for a second to win the Trucker 200, then didn't win it after a story that people who know. But still, I found pretty solid season. But eventually, I picked as a most improved winner on the men's side Simon Nordahl Svensson, who is the overall winner of the Gravel Earth Series, and definitely showed some pretty strong and consistent performances. Also, I guess in Nebraska at the Gravel Worlds, where as we probably may touch upon in a bit when we talk about a different award, showed a super strong performance there as well. So that was my most improved rider. So I guess the community can pick between 3 in each category, and the overlap was rather limited.
Yeah.
Any objections?
I'm pretty sure I know who will win that. If we do it on like a German Instagram channel, the chances on the women's side are quite high. It might be a German. So.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's jump to the next award, shall we? Most impressive performance of the year. So what we defined this as the name suggests, is a individual performance of a rider in a gravel race. But we also did add a little additional requirement, because it must have been a performance that fans could have followed, or where they were able to see it, is the way I put it in the guidelines. And obviously, as a racer, Paul, you have a very different perspective, because you are there, and many races, if you're there, you can see the performance. But a mere bystander like myself, I needed to be visible, be it on an Instagram live stream, or even better, on a proper live stream TV broadcast or wherever. So that was an additional requirement, because otherwise it's hard to judge these performances. And with that said, anyone keen to go first?
Yeah, I can start first.
Go.
So actually, I have just one name there. I mean, I have a woman there. I had a man name in my mind as well, but then I thought actually almost every race he is doing is like impressive, so it kind of is not impressive anymore. But I think the most impressive ride for me was for sure Rosa Klöser winning Unbound, with like the big time gap she had midway. She closed then, and then winning the sprint to win Unbound. That was, in my eyes, the most impressive ride. And on the men's side, it's just like Keegan Swenson does so many impressive rides that it's not impressive anymore. I mean, the thing he did that what he did at Steamboat or at Leadville and so many other races, just like it just became the normality. Or yeah. So for me, that's it's not surprising anymore if he does like 100K solo or something.
Yeah, right.
Amanda, who is on your list?
Okay, so originally for the men's side, I had put a rider that I realize I probably can't pick, because this race wasn't technically broadcasted, or they only did like highlights of it, so you couldn't actually see the attack. But my original pick was Brennan Wirtz at American Gravel Nationals because he had a really smart attack that paid off. But I only know that story because he told it later, not because I got to see it on screen. So I think it was a really impressive performance, but under the criteria that people had to have seen it, I think he doesn't get to win that. So I'm going to go with Lachlan Morton. I think that the way that he won Unbound was super impressive. You know, going into that final few corners, I don't think I would have picked Lachlan for that sprint. And I think because of that, him actually pulling off the win was impressive, and everyone was very happy for him. And then on the women's side, I picked LDC Lauren DiCrescenzo at the RAD in Colorado, part of the Lifetime Grand Prix, because she won by just over 8 minutes over Sofia Gomez Villafañe. And in past years, you know, she hasn't been able to win with these like super impressive gaps like she used to, like the year that she won Unbound. I think that she hasn't had those like really dominating performances in a while. So it was kind of fun to see her show up in Colorado and do what she used to do, which is just absolutely crush the field and not even allow the women to sort of work together to get back to her. We've seen a lot more of the women's races in the US where they stay in a group for longer, and there's a lot more of these like group dynamics, and we haven't seen those like impressive flyers in a while. So it was kind of fun to see Lauren pull that off.
Yeah, and in regards to the sprint at Unbound, I think that was like just like a sprint of two really dead people, and he was just the one who was living a bit more. Yeah. But but I actually forgot about that, right? But that was really impressive what he did. But like the whole day, he was really, really impressive. He's just such a machine. Yeah.
So let's start on the women's side. To me, there were essentially 3 standout performances that I really had in my mind, and that I believe all would also be worthy winners for this. Melissa Rowlands in Leadville, we already mentioned this performance. I think it was like it's such an important race in the US off-road scene, even though, okay, you could argue it's technically a mountain bike, another gravel race, but then people now have drop bars. So anyways, that is definitely a performance that was in on my list, but not the eventual winner. To me, really impressive as well was Marianne Voss at the UCI World Championship, beating Lotte Kopecky in the sprint. So here we are, of course, talking about road racers going to gravel, but still, I was really surprised how clearly she managed to win the sprint against Kopecky there, and to me, it was really also a standout performance. But eventually, I landed where Paul landed on the women's side and said Rosa Klöser Unbound. Like you say, the story she told a few times by now with the flat and having to stick to the group, then change the wheel and so on and so forth. Impressive performance and a worthy winner. On the men's side, I had an even longer list of stuff that was in my mind. There, for instance, Alexei Vermeulen at Big Sugar was pretty convincing, pretty cool. Keegan in Leadville, first time on a drop bar bike, but then he didn't manage to beat his own record, even though he flattered. But yeah, still probably not enough. I also picked one performance that is probably, it probably doesn't meet all the criteria because it's not one single performance, but I just wanted to at least mention it. It's Justinas Levaika, who won the Triple Crown. So here we are talking, of course, ultra distance racing, but it is really impressive to achieve it and should be mentioned. But I also ended up picking Lachlan's Unbound win as the top performance. So on my list, 2 Unbound winners as the most impressive performance. But it's really, to me, the way how they went about it, Lachlan like attacking so early on. I will never forget, he took this wrong turn, then was brought back by the group. So yeah, really cool race, cool story on both sides. I guess there will not be any major objections against any of the picks here, because these were all pretty worthy, no?
Yep, yeah, I agree. And now it's coming actually to the most interesting category in my eyes, because I'm curious what you have seen out there this year.
So then, what's the next category? Most interesting setup. Of course, we're talking gravel, and I guess everybody who's interested in gravel is also interested in how the bikes are set up, for anything from tire sizes down to extra tech like Marianne Voss used. So if it's the most interesting for you, Paul, I will once again let you go first.
Yeah, and just before anyone is answering, I will be really shocked if we choosing different one. I think we should be all on the same page. That was just one crazy bike in my eyes this year, but I'm curious. We will see. Amanda, you can start.
Oh, me. Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you. Okay, perfect. Well, okay, I knew I had the same thought that everybody would pick the same one for the men's side. So I have a second pick. But I will say the first one I thought of was Chase Wark. I think he does the craziest bike setup stuff. But I will answer my second pick is Taylor Ladine's Unbound XL bike setup. Actually, both my riders for this pick are XL setups, just because I think it's more fun to have the aero bars and, you know, the extra stuff that you have to pack, and a lot more of these like one day epics where you have a lot more gear that you needed to deal with. So he was riding a test frame for Allied. It was one that was unreleased, but he was testing new geometry, and he had Shimano Di2, the new 2x12 speed drivetrain. And he rode a 4831 chainring with an 1134 cassette. And he had a rigid fork, which I believe was an Envy. It wasn't even an Allied fork. And no aero bars, which was a surprising choice for a setup for that long. And he also rode the tail fin on the back, which we don't often see for like single push events like XL. But he said that he chose that because it gave him a more aero profile instead of having to put stuff on the front of the bike or having to stuff like a bigger frame bag had it been underneath him. So yeah, I love sort of all the like nuances that come with the Unbound XL bike setup. So I picked Taylor on the men's side. And then on the women's side, Kate Boyle, who also rode Unbound XL, she finished fourth, and she was riding a pivot vault, but she was riding the 1x12 speed mechanical Shimano group, which is definitely a choice. And I think she did that because of the chances of mud. You know, there's a lot less things that could go wrong when you have just a mechanical setup and no front derailleur. So she had a 42 tooth chainring on the front with a 1051 cassette. And she did ride a suspension fork up front. So she had the Fox 32 taper cast fork, and then she also rode aero bars. So I thought that was a kind of a super fun, totally different bike setups, but they were doing the same thing. And that's why I love that event, because, you know, it's always fun to see why people make the choices they do on those gear selections. So yeah, I love those two for this category.
Yeah, I have actually just one pick, and that's the first one you mentioned. Chase Wark, because this bike, the setup really impressed me. I saw him already using it at the Recon. Like I did like the middle part, I don't know, like 4 days before the race, and I saw him riding, I don't know, with two other guys. And I went past him and was like, is he, and it was really bumpy, is he really riding a disc? So his race setup was, I have to describe it. So he was riding in the front, like a really deep section wheel, like an aero wheel. He was riding in the back, not like a full Tamtur disc, but like from head, there's this kind of like semi-disc, which is almost close, but just, the hole which it has left is maybe as wide or as big as like a mountain bike cassette. Then he was riding like a one-time along one by drivetrain with a mountain bike cassette. Then he had his hydration pack not in the backpack or in his bag somewhere. He had it in his frame, and the frame was covered with like an arrow-shaped plastic thing, which looks just really funny. Then he had like a kind of bag in front where his computer was mounted, like quite far forward. So which looks like kind of like a time trial bar, but it wasn't a time trial bar. And he was using a time trial helmet, TT helmet. So that was really the wildest setup I ever seen used in a gravel race. I know he used a similar setup already in the spring before Unbound, but yeah, that definitely is my top pick. And I haven't seen anything coming close. Of course, beside like all these adventure formats where they're also using crazy builds.
Yeah, this one is also my winner. I think he wrote something similar at Garmin Gravel Worlds as well, right? But somehow a changed version of the disc bike. But that was my winner. But I think there were a few interesting setups and stories to consider. Definitely Keegan going to the drop bars at on the mountain bike at Leadville, also one of the more interesting setups, even though he's not the first one to do it, but probably the most famous one to do it. Then Dylan Johnson at Unbound had also a pretty interesting setup. And what I found, it's a story you already alluded to, Amanda. Brennan Wirtz at US Nationals. It's not because it was so crazy and out there, even though he's always on a titanium bike, which is unusual, but more his tire choice, like really picking his tires for the final of the race, whereas most guys were on mountain bike tires. There he was on what, like 30 something, no, 40 slicks or something like this, right? Yeah, and that is like as a setup worth mentioning. But yeah, Chase Dwark, definitely the master of the freak bikes in 2024. I also do have a winner on the women's side here, and that is Marianne Voss at Gravel Worlds. But to be honest, it seemed to me like there is not that much reporting about the setups of the women in gravel as there is about the men. So maybe there were some that just went unreported, and because I wasn't on location, I don't know about them. So in that case, I apologize.
No, I agree. That's one of the things I was actually going to say, was that it was harder for me to pick on the women's side because I don't know, maybe they're just more conservative with their choices and they're not as out there as like the Dylan Johnsons and the Chase Works, but there's definitely a hole that can be filled there with women going like and doing some crazy bike setups. Like that's an opportunity that I think is an open door, because like I had a hard time finding, if women are doing any other crazy setups specifically for like Grand Prix racing, and there's nothing like out of the box like for the men.
Yeah, or maybe it's not being reported on because probably the people who cover this don't pay that close of an attention. I don't know, but either way, definitely you could stand out if you went the Chase Dwark route.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Amanda, I think as it was your suggestion to talk about to bring on the next award of the most notorious segment, maybe you can introduce the award and how it works.
Yeah, I had this idea when we were going through the different categories, and we were talking about race coverage and different actual racers and athletes for different categories and best team, but I think it would be too hard to say like what's the hardest course or what's the most technical course. Like that's something that I think is just too broad of a scope. So we kind of narrowed it down to like, okay, what is a course feature or a notorious course segment that maybe defines a race course instead of like in comparing them all to each other. Because for instance, Unbound has like Little Egypt, and the mud could be a feature for Unbound, and Belgian Waffle Ride is notorious for having all these different sectors that they took from like spring classics and being able to name these different sectors and having them be defining features in a race. And I think that's part of the fun of gravel, is that there's always something in all of these races that as soon as you cross the finish line, everybody's talking about like, well, how did you do the wall, or how did you do up this one climb, or that descent was so sketchy. You know, there's always something that everybody ends up talking about. So that's why I thought this would be a fun way to pick across different races. And also, like I said, my viewpoint is so American that I'm curious what you guys think, if there's something that defines the bigger European races.
But on the European side, I find it, I was really thinking about it, like there's no, we don't have, at least in my eyes, not something like BWR has, you know, like in BWR California, you know, you actually could ride with a road bike, but you know, they're always throwing like one bit in, which makes it unrideable on a road bike, kinda. And as you mentioned with, I thought also about Little Egypt and Unbound, which is really like a race destroying part in the course. And if you're just riding there on a training ride, it's actually not that bad, but like all the stress around it makes it so dangerous. So in Europe, to be honest, we don't have to, at least in my eyes, we don't have that yet, because it's not as established as it is in the US with the courses. So I will have picked definitely American races or like parts of American races than European races for this.
So what did you end up picking?
No, I wrote down any BWR segment because it's literally like you're totally fine, and there's always like one section, which it's usually really just one section, which is a pain in the ass, you know. It's actually fine, but then it's, for a certain moment, it's not so enjoyable anymore, and then it's fine again. And it's like typical BWR, but it's also, I think, what I like to do. And for me, Unbound with Little Egypt or the Mud was the obvious one, but I think BWR is famous for the segments.
I mean, probably we were not like super precise with the definitions here, but in my understanding, it was not necessarily a segment from a super well-established race or a race that comes back every year. And my winning segment is from a European race. It is from the Gravel World Championships, and it's the entrance section. Paul, we talked about it even on the podcast and off the podcast, and Amanda, probably you've seen it as well. But just after the start, you entered like very small path next to water, and after this section you even had to do like a 180-degree turn, like a switchback or so, whatever you would call it. And this to me was like really, once I thought about this award and which one specific segment was like the most what the fuck, this one came to my mind and I picked this one. Again, from the fans' perspective, not being there.
I can tell you, definitely worse this year than this.
Okay.
And Little Egypt is like multiple categories above that. But Little Egypt is really like, it's comparable to like important points in a race in any like big classic. It's horror. Everyone knows they have to be there in front. It's and you're all there, you're just riding on these massive gravel roads, and then you have this pinpoint and everyone wants to be in front, and it's just really annoying.
Yeah. What about, there was nothing at like the Traca that had like one kind of feature like that where everybody was trying to get ahead to?
Yeah, of course. The Traca has a totally different dynamics because it's all the time on like smaller paths, but there's no like one part where I will say that it sticks out, you know. Of course, you have like descents which are kind of a bit tricky, but I understood it like that you know, like really a segment you talk about all the time. And in Tracker, you have multiple segments you could talk about, but like BWR or like Unbound, you have like this one segment where you actually make plans about, you know, how to ride there, you know, how to get there, how to get through it. So I feel in Tracker it's a bit different. And yeah, at least in my eyes.
Ah, interesting. Oh, that's cool.
So where did you end up, Amanda?
Yeah, Little Egypt for me, like just one of the things that everyone talks about. But like you could also just blanket that category and just say the mud in general in Kansas, is like that could pop up anywhere. It's just something you have to deal with. It's not necessarily a certain road or anything, but it's just one of those things that if it comes up, it could be race ending or race winning for people. So I love how all of these courses just always have something like that you either need to know from historical reference or having done it, whatever it is, but there's always like something that people talk about. I think is cool.
Yeah. And what I also have to add to like Little Egypt, which makes it so outstanding also for me, is that if we take Trucker, which is the biggest European race, maybe, you don't have, in my eyes, really a part where you would say that could end your race. But in Trucker, in Unbound, it could either be the mud, like last year, from right from the beginning, your race could be done, or Little Egypt. I mean, I had 2 flats, I broke my rim, so the race is then just finished. And as I said, like you're running there through in the training, it's actually fine because you can choose your own line and you can go on your own speed. But the stress you have around you, and there's not Little Egypt, but everything which comes afterwards, which is also not flat but hilly, makes it really to like a massive deal breaker if you have a technical there. So yeah, that's probably really the in gravel at the moment the most notorious part. Yeah.
So let's jump to the next award, which is the best gravel team. Probably that's even controversial for some people because the fact that teams come into the sport is not appreciated by everyone, but it's a fact we're dealing with. And I think we don't yet know how team dynamics will unfold, how the economics of teams work in gravel. There are many differences to how road teams work, at least so far, in how it's financed. Very often in many teams, the riders still have individual sponsors, and it's like a hybrid between a privateer and a team, and so on. And so thinking about this, and taking all this into consideration, we said, look, of course, the best results matter for this award, but also let's take into account some criteria such as the innovation of the team, the presentation, and the tactics. Do we think they are smart when it comes to race tactics? And with that as a description, Amanda, what's your take on teams, and what do you think about teams entering the sport? You come from an era where that was probably a no-go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an inevitable evolution for sure, and just something that was naturally going to happen. But yeah, people did sort of not scoff at it, but like, oh, here we go, when the teams start coming in. And I think for me, this year specifically, it's hard to argue against the Paz Racing team because they had dominance both in the US and internationally. And I think if someone came to me tomorrow and they were like, Amanda, here's a ton of money for you to start your own team, how would you do it? I think I would have done it exactly how the Paz Racing team did it, where they get all these great riders from different parts of the world that can go chase Gravel Earth Series, American races, UCI races, and sort of put their stamp on everything because there are so many different places to ride gravel now and race it. So I think for me, the Paz Racing team in general, like I said, it would be hard to argue. But if I was to pick a U.S. team, the Santa Cruz Hit Squad with Tobin, Keegan, and Alexis is a great pick as well. Mostly because it's also not just a men's team. They did include Alexis, and while she is the only female rider, that makes the team, the 3 of them, and they're able to go around to these different races and still provide a lot of return on investment for their sponsors. And it's fun to see how Tobin and Keegan are going to sort of tag team different races as well, and sort of the strategy that they play that's very different from the strategy that the Paz Racing team plays as well. I think what frustrated me a little bit with the pause racing team this year was that they were always like, oh, we weren't riding like a team. We were just racing. And if it worked out, then it worked out and we were going to work together. And I would have rather they just been like, yeah, if we can work together, we're going to race like a team, and sort of live up to that a little bit more and be honest about it. But it's okay. They still raced as a team where they wanted to and it made sense. And having guys like Chad, giving him an opportunity to race after leaving the world tour was great. So I think what they have going on is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's also interesting how the team will evolve next year, because a few riders leaving. Too. And actually quite a few riders leaving, important riders. So yeah, gonna be interesting. Yeah, for me it's actually couldn't really decide, because like from a German perspective, we have of course a Rosa Racing Circle, which in my eyes, media-wise, they're doing probably the best job of all of them. I don't know if you know them, Amanda. Yeah, because they have actually just raced in Europe, and Frederik Rassmann is racing there, and they have also like a mixed team. But the social media presence is quite good, and also the strategy they have. And I'm also curious what's going to happen there. I mean, then you have the classified factory team. They finished fourth at Unbound, got second at the European Championships. I really couldn't decide, so I don't know if maybe I name Rosa Racing Circle, because Paranormal Racing for me, at least when I was racing with them, it didn't felt like that they were really a team. They had all the same jerseys, and as you mentioned, they probably rode together when it was working out for them. But for example, Rosa Racing Circle, they always had like the plan to help each other. So speaking of like really having a team, like with tactic and so on, it's probably Rosa Racing Circle for me first, and then the classified guys.
Yeah, so you already mentioned the top names on my list, and eventually I gave it to Par Racing just because of the results, and on the men's and the women's side were impressive. But I agree that when it comes to presentation and philosophy, Rosa Racing Circle is special. But yeah, Amanda didn't even hear about this team. Now she did, but that is like, in terms of standing internationally, globally, they are probably not yet there. But I think the way they go about it, I don't know if you have any insights if they will go tackle some US races as well.
Yeah, they will come to Unbound, and they have some new signings, so they're definitely gonna step up next year.
Yeah, then beware, watch out. If they come to the US, I think that could definitely raise their profile, and then they will be a very interesting competitor for this award next season as well. There are so many teams that are like mixed teams. You don't really know, are they racing as a team? But what to me stands out with Paranormal, even though they say, okay, we don't race as a team, I think in some races you definitely saw they applied team tactics, right, to get their riders in position at the Garmin Gravel Worlds. On the women's side, we saw who was away first. Was it Caro Migon who went away, and then another of their riders followed, but really made sure nobody else would follow?
Her and Emily were trying. Emily Newsom were trying to get away, and as soon as one went, then she went, and they knew that they could get away that way.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting how that is developing the next years. But also, if you look at Kenya Collective, I mean, they're called Collective, but I think they're just sharing the name. There was not so much tactic involved, I think, on the women's side this year, but next year with, I don't know how much Rosa Klöser is involved in Kenya Collective next year. She's on Kenya next year with Caroline Schiff, if they could combine their power.
But she's on Kenyan SRAM, right?
Yeah, but she on gravel might ride different setup. And so that's going to be interesting. But also on the men's side, they have a few good guys. but I don't know if they're playing it out that smart all the time. But yeah, I guess it will also improve over the next years because teams will play a really important role, and riders will get cheaper in the next years as more coming into the sport, and then it's also more affordable. Yeah, it's just how it is.
Yeah, that's interesting.
At the moment, you don't, at least how I see it, you don't have many really good guys and girls, and they cost a bit of money. And the more people coming in, the prices will go down in average, I think. Yeah.
In the UCI races that you've done, Paul, do you feel like there are more tactics that get used, or does it still feel like everyone's sort of racing for themselves?
It really depends, but let's say if you look at the Gravel World Championships, UCI Gravel World Championships, definitely, I mean, that having that Mathieu has his own teammates, not the national teammates, but like the Alpecin, the Koenig teammates riding for Belgium, but helping him in the Dutch jersey, that really helped. And yeah, of course, there are some races where all like this cyclocross specialists coming in and they have a few teammates. They're certainly helping each other. But what the problem we still have is like that to help in gravel, you need like kind of a really high level, because you need to be almost as good as your leader to be up there all the time, because you have to push all the time. So it's not like on the road where, helping Pogacar in the flat, you need just pure watt, and going up a climb, it's then watt per kilogram. So it's different. But like gravel, it's like you kind of need to be almost as good as your leader, which makes it really hard to put a team together, which can help or work together all the time, in my eyes. But I think that will also change over the years, but that's how I see it at the moment. And yeah, but definitely, in Europe, race tactics is more important than in the US, I feel. US is still just pure racing and like putting what's out. And if you're in a group, everyone tries to save as much as possible. And in Europe, it's more tactic involved. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like in the US, but like the Tobin Keegan dynamic, for example, Tobin's he's not going to go all the way to the line with Keegan, but he's going to like blow himself up and ride with him as long as he can.
At a certain point, yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like you could eventually start seeing riders just get used as domestiques like that, maybe, but I don't know. But it's interesting.
Yeah, because what I just said, I thought about that example because it's the opposite to what I said. But because what they do is quite, you don't see it in Europe, that you have just one guy, and he basically just does maybe like 1/3 of a race, and the rest he's just like riding around. You don't have that in Europe. Like they always try to finish somewhere in the front as well. But like with Tobin, it's the race I did. He's pulling until a certain point, and he's just saying goodbye, and and that's strange. But I guess he gets paid for that, and probably also quite well. So that's fine. But we don't have it that way in Europe. If that's coming in, that's also strange because it's a bit like a marathon running where you have all the pacers, who are doing like certain segments, and then they're just like pulling off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, gonna be interesting to see these tactics evolve, and I also believe gravel tactics will, of course, be similar in some respects to the tactics we know from the road, but then also very different because the format is so different. Anyways, that's a topic maybe for another time because we still have to hand out some additional awards, and the next one is really near and dear to me. It's the best race coverage. Best race coverage, as the name suggests, is all about bringing the races to the people out there who can not be on location, and doing this well with all the extra difficulties that come with being on these super remote locations, being in the midst of the forest or on endless farm roads or never-ending farm roads, and so on. But we definitely saw in 2024 improvements, new approaches to broadcasting, and we want to reward those. I said it doesn't have to be any specific way of coverage. It doesn't need to be on TV or doesn't have to be a full live stream. You can take the entire package of how it is brought to the fans into account. So,
Okay.
Paul, you already told me, as you are always in the races, you didn't actually pick, because makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about the gravel worlds, so not the UCI. How can we separate that? Okay, so not the UCI gravel worlds, the other gravel worlds in the US.
Yeah, the formerly Garmin, and now Lauf.
Yeah, I heard that must have been the best coverage so far. What I heard, even better than what Lifetime tried to do. So, but I guess you guys can tell me more about it.
Yeah, as Amanda, you're probably also in a bit of a complicated situation. Let me go first. I mean, I'm the person who is definitely doing watching all the stuff, because I'm hardly ever on location. So I really appreciated how Lifetime is bringing the live coverage on Instagram, especially on the women's side, to the people. They do a good job, but it's all just on Instagram. It is in snippets. And I also appreciated how the UCI broadcasts properly on TV the women's and the men's race, even though on the women's side that's some technical difficulties, but at least it was broadcast. And on the men's side, they showed, I think, the last 2 hours, but yeah, the last hours. But as you alluded to, Paul, my winner is definitely the Garmin Gravel Worlds broadcast, which was a live stream that, Amanda, you happened to be part of the crew talking to the people. And to me, they did not only produce it really well with like color commentator, the play-by-play commentator using lingo from different sports, and then on the road, you and was it Bill who was following the racers in the car?
Yes.
Yeah. So great crew, and they also showed the race from beginning to end, and both races, the women's and the man. So that was overall, as a package, a way how I would like to watch a race, and very few technical hiccups. I don't know what they use to bring the signal from the camera to the people. Maybe you can speak a bit more about it, if they used Elon's satellite internet, the Starlink, or something else. But definitely top-notch production. So my winner, clearly.
Yeah, and I said that I probably would be too biased to say Garmin Gravel Worlds, but I do think that whole live stream was revolutionary for gravel. It's something that the production company that they used have done for like the Ironman races and triathlon. So it wasn't like it was the first to ever be used, but it was definitely the first for gravel to be used in that way. So that production team is used to doing triathlon races and covering Ironman distances, which is a really long event as well. But the one advantage that Nebraska had specifically was that they had full cell coverage the whole time. So they, unlike being in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, had decent cell coverage to be able to produce that the whole way that they did, instead of having to have satellites and any of the roaming vehicles with the satellites on them. They could just use the normal cell coverage that was around the town. So that was one advantage that they had. But I think that the way that they did it and executed it was awesome. But if I am too biased to say that, my next pick was going to be all of the Gravel Earth series coverage in general. I really enjoy the woman that does the microphone, getting the interviews with people. But for the Migration Gravel race, they had Betsy Welsh down there, who works for Velo. And they gave her the microphone. So she was the one doing all of the interviews and sort of some of the Instagram coverage for that. And that's still all saved on their Instagram page, so you can go watch it. But she interviewed a lot of regular participants as well. And so while they did really good like race coverage and the race recaps from each day, they also sprinkled that in with her talking to just everybody else that was doing the race that I thought was really cool. So yeah, that's my pick number 2. I think just like I said, in general, the Graveler series does a pretty good job of, no matter where they are in the world, they sort of have like a pretty standard way that they package everything up and deliver it. And obviously the Lifetime Grand Prix does a good job as well. I think that's sort of another shoe-in, but in terms of like how people are doing it differently, those are my 2 picks.
How's the talk in the US regarding race coverage? Like, did everyone who saw like the Gravel World said, all right, we want to do it the same way or want to invest more in it? Because in Europe, we still have the ongoing discussion how to broadcast it, and it's actually interesting how to do it. I mean, in the US, it feels a bit simpler because the roads are usually wider, but then you have like you don't have all the time like cell phone connection. So, yeah. What is the talk? What can we see next year?
Yeah, I think people, I don't want to say they're tired of Instagram, but I think they want to see more than just the Instagram coverage. And I think that's why Lifetime wanted to get away from that call of a lifetime at the end of the season and sort of do the recap videos that come out 48 hours after the races end, because people want to see more production value from what actually happens in that race. And then Garmin Gravel World's doing YouTube, I think, was also a big deal. It wasn't getting live streamed on Instagram. It was actually on YouTube, which in my opinion reaches a lot more people. You know, somebody like my dad isn't going to go watch Instagram live. He's going to pull up YouTube and watch it that way. So I think people want to see more platforms being used and sort of more ways that they're bringing the coverage. And I do think people are okay with it being like location specific, you know, with Kansas not having the best cell phone coverage, but Nebraska having something like that. And I do think that racers are now, in the past couple of years, sort of strategizing the races that they want to do based on that coverage. You know, if it's going to bring them good eyeballs. Like, I don't know if you guys saw that interview that Chase Wark did where he decided to go on that flyer at the beginning of Unbound just so that he would have all that TV time and be on the Instagram live. He was like, I got like 200 followers or something just from going on that flyer in the beginning, which was like worth it to him, even if he was going to blow himself up, which is like what they do in the, you know, Tour de France breakaways and any sort of world tour ride. You know, when they go do those, it's for TV time. So that to me was a really interesting development this year, where like maybe riders will start doing that because it brings value to their sponsors in some way based on like how races are actually doing that coverage.
Yeah, but unlike in road, all the attention is also brought to the individual who then converts it to their own social media, which is their own channel, their own platform. So it's even more advantageous for them personally versus just bringing like a weird brand, I don't know, Astana to name one. But they don't actually go in breakaways, I believe.
Yeah. No, it's true. To be honest, I never thought about that. I mean, I know that aspect from the road, but I never thought of like going in an early breakaway and gravel racing to get like the coverage. But what he said makes totally sense. I think what gravel has to work on is bringing the coverage has to be more diverse. Like with coverage, I mean like also interviews, but then also in that including not just like visual, but also written outlets, because what I feel is that always all the same people are in the spotlight, always the same people get asked what they think about these races, always all the same people are the favorites for every race, which makes no sense anymore. It made sense. Of course, you can always say Keegan is a favorite where he starts, you know, but you can always say like Sophia is a favorite, but it's deeper now. The field is deeper, and also the personalities we have in the sport. And I feel that a lot of people are left out from the media in general, and I think that has to change a bit. Yeah.
Well, with these great podcasts now, you know, that's our job.
Of course. But you know, I'm most of the time I'm really annoyed about some coverage of gravel races. Because they just want to cover to cover it, and you can feel that by the people they're asking and the previews and so on they're doing, and it's just a bit annoying.
Yeah,
because as I said, there's so many great athletes from around the world. So
and then, as I recently said on a podcast, I compared gravel to being a basketball fan in the 70s, where you had to really dig for your nuggets because not all the games were on national TV or there was no live stream. And then you read in the newspaper about this big center guy called Bill Russell who scores 100 points or so in games allegedly. And yeah, you really had to dig for the stuff. And gravel is a lot like this currently. And I guess for it to stick, you really need the overall packaging, like Paul, what you said. You need to really think about the formats and telling the stories in a diverse way. And I think the series, now we have a few major ones. If you want to still consider BWR as a major one, then 4, otherwise 3 with Lifetime, Gravel Earth Series, and the UCI Gravel World Series, and they have ideas about how to package this. I don't know if the UCI does, to be honest, but Gravel Earth Series and Lifetime definitely do, and they have a vision for gravel as a product, as a media product, and I think that is important, even though it might annoy people who love the spirit of gravel, how it used to be 10 years ago, but yeah.
It's an involvement. Yeah.
Let's see what happens in 25. I mean, there were some comments by Payson on his podcast where he, in my ears, alluded to more live coverage of the Lifetime stuff next year. He mentioned something that Lifetime has interesting stuff for the coverage in the next season up their sleeves. So let's see.
But to be honest, in that I hope they do. But sometimes feels like better do like a really good post-production than covering or like do a bad coverage. I feel.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, ideally something like Unbound can be seen live, like, Ironman World Championships on Hawaii, which is boring most of the time, but you still kind of want to be able to switch. You still want to be watch it all the time, because to be honest, Unbound is boring for most of the time as a rider and as a viewer, but you still want to be able to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's more boring than a Tour de France sprint stage. 200k flat and a sprint. I think visually,
we can talk about that when they have been able to showcase it for 11 hours or 12 hours. Then we can talk afterwards if a tour flat stage is still more boring than Unbound.
Fair enough. Okay, we have one more award to give out, and it's probably the most prestigious one of our nice little awards here. It is the Most Valuable Rider Award. Everybody, of course, knows MVP. Here we don't have players, we have riders, so it's the MVR Award. We did make some guidelines and rules for how it works, because one thing that we defined is only riders who focus on gravel off-road racing do qualify to quantify it. I don't know if you guys checked. I didn't really check. In my winners is minimum 60% of the races during the season need to be off-road races. Obviously, that is to for instance, say Mathieu van der Poel can't be the most obviously he won the gravel worlds, and also he is clearly the most valuable rider who won a gravel race, but he's just not a gravel rider, so he cannot win, and I think that is fair. We also defined some criteria to look at and to consider. Obviously, top results are the most important one, but there are more. To be most valuable, audience draw and your star appeal also matters, because that is in the end what makes you big and makes you stand out. And value for sponsors, which of course relates to others. But if you have very creative ways of bringing attention to your sponsors, maybe that is something that also increases your value as a rider. And with that said, who wants to go first? Paul, as you didn't have a winner for the last award, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Amanda can start.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll go. Okay, so on the men's side, I picked Griffin Easter. He's maybe not like the biggest name. I will say the caveat to this is I said it would be hard to vote against Keegan and Sophia from a domestic perspective. But so I wanted to sort of pick like second tier most valuables, a lot of perspective coming from like if you were a sponsor, what's the most bang for your buck? So Griffin Easter, because of his really like standout year, he had a lot of great results in 2024. He also sort of like runs his own team. And so all of the sponsors for that team, it's a really good initiative that he's working for. You know, it's a nonprofit and he has a really good reason why he's going to all of these races. And then on top of that, he also wasn't in the Lifetime Grand Prix this year, which sort of allowed him to have this really great schedule of like doing whatever he wanted to. So he did some Belgian waffle ride races, he did some Lifetime races, and he also went and raced in Spain quite a bit. And ended up finishing second overall in the Gravel Earth Series. So from most specifically a value for a sponsor, I think Griffin Easter was a really big return on that investment this year because he just had such a stellar year. And I'm a little, not bummed, but I'm kind of, I wish he didn't get into the Grand Prix for 2025 just because I kind of liked how he was just able to do whatever and maybe some more international racing that like he did this year. So we'll see how being part of the Grand Prix sort of changes things for next year. But I think from like that value perspective, definitely Griffin Easter for 2024. And then on the women's side, I picked Melissa Rollins, not just because of her Leadville race, but sort of because of everything she did after that. And it wasn't like she just had a fluke race, you know, and something that like, oh yeah, she's the Leadville girl. Of course she's going to win that and sort of, I don't know, fall back into the rest of the midfield for the Grand Prix. She just went on and kept being in that front group of women for the remaining races of the season. And sort of put a stamp on like, yeah, I'm not just like a one-off racer that's going to do well on a certain course type. She ended up just like crushing it at a lot of the gravel races as well. So I don't know what she's going to do sponsorship wise for next year. If she's still going to race for that team or if she's going to sort of do her own thing. But all of those team sponsors that she has, like that's obviously was a huge value to them to have a Leadville winner. And then somebody that was also continuously talked about for all of the rest of the Grand Prix coverage.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, these are, like you say, you disregarded the top favorites and interesting selections. And I like that you really thought a lot about the sponsorship value. Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the most obvious is on the men's side, Keegan Swenson. I don't know if you get the most out of it, like money wise, so the money you put in and you get out, because I guess he's by far the best paid rider, off-road rider, at least in the gravel scene in the world. But everyone knows him, even in Europe, everyone knows him. So I think for sponsors, he is quite a good investment. But the most obvious one. But I think if I had money and I would like to spend it and I want someone to show my products, yeah. I think it's Dylan Johnson. Dylan Johnson has I think result-wise, he's obviously not on the level of Keegan, but I think Dylan Johnson has built something special over the last years, even in Europe. People talking about him, and when he decides to take a rider tire, people buying rider tires, or thinking about suspension on the bike, on a gravel bike. So I think he has quite a big influence regarding equipment. So yeah, for me, Keegan and Dylan Johnson are probably the ones most valuable riders. Obviously, Dylan Johnson had a good season, but there are also riders who are better than him, but I think in general the package is quite good. And on the women's side, for 100% Carolyn Schiff. I think result-wise, personality-wise, appeal, and then like also the value to the sponsors. I mean, I can just see what she's doing with Canyon and how much Canyon puts into her. I think they see the value. Of course, they also like to spend money at Canyon. We know that. But I think on the women's side, she's a clear pick for me. And also she is known in the US now because of Unbound and in Europe. Yeah.
So I also went for it. So it's really interesting to me that both of you who are proper athletes and racers yourself really gave a lot of consideration to like these secondary sponsorship value angles and so on, much more than me, because to me results definitely were the primary criteria that I looked at when I put my list together. And actually, to be frank, creating the short lists was more work and harder than picking the winners in both categories. So on the women's side, I ended up giving the award to Sofia Gomez Villafañe because she won so many races. I think overall her season was probably even more impressive than last year's season, arguably. And she is definitely a top star. But a close second on my list is definitely Caro Schiff. Just I felt on the result sheet, the 2024 season was definitely strong, but not as strong. And sadly, some races like World she missed and couldn't perform there, because that would have been also interesting. Also on my MVR list is Lauren Stevens. I think she also had a pretty strong season, especially I think the second half of the season, and she is a household name as well. Rosa Klöser, to me, also somebody on this list, just because the media presence she had after Unbound and the way she played it, probably even more so over here in Europe than in the US. But she was on so many podcasts lately that were in my ear and on video shows and so on. And last rider I want to at least give a shout out to is Carolina Migon. She, in the results category, had a very, very strong year. I also think she has a pretty good social media game, and I guess she, as a brand, probably also a good person to put your money in, especially as she is not yet the hottest commodity out there. And then on the men's side, the award, my award pick is Keegan. Other riders that I have on the list, Lachlan, I mean, he is also omnipresent, but I guess not cheap as well. But the Unbound win, great result, and the other stuff he did this year, the Australian circumvention, also created a lot of PR and attention. Pete Stettiner, also, I guess, worth a little shout out, and Simon Nordal Svensson as well on my list, because the results plus the personality that I feel like he starts showing on his social channels more and more is also interesting. As a fan following the sport, also one of the people on the list. But yeah, Sophia and Keegan, my winners. Very interested in seeing what the people out there are going to vote as the eventual award winners.
Yeah, I think this MVR is, I think every one of us took like different points, or like not different point of views, but yeah. I mean, for me, it was like the whole marketing value was quite important, because I think gravel is still a lot about that, to be honest. Not usually the best riders. Well, let's say if you look into the top 10, it makes a difference if you have 10,000 followers or 2,000 followers in your salary, and also if you have an outgoing personality or not. So I think that will still always be an important role, and also important for the sponsors. Yeah, because you don't have a team behind you, so you have to promote yourself and the sponsors.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is why a person like Dylan is really interesting, right? Because I think he was first or not first a creator, he was a bike racer all the time, but I think for a while he was more focused on the creator content side before he then really doubled down on the racing side. And I remember an interview where he said, at some point, I don't know, 3 seasons ago or so, he felt that he could be really competitive, and then he invested even more into his own training versus training others and trying to sell training plans via his YouTube. Yeah, interesting case study of how to do it. If you can play the content game and you are very good at racing, which he is compared to most people, even though he's not one of the top guys in Lifetime, but still top 10 at Unbound. Any last famous words, Amanda? You told
no, this is fun.
It was first. You said you were curious to see how much the European perspective differs from the US perspective. What's your takeaway?
That it is still pretty similar. Like our picks still crossed over in a lot of places, and like the tactics and the teams and all of that stuff I think was more similar than I expected, but it was fun, a fun exercise to go through all of this. And like, some of my main takeaways, like we talked about the women not having as much coverage on equipment, and how are these teams going to shake up next year? These were like all questions that I started thinking about once I was going through all of this stuff, and makes me excited for next year. Who knows? I think gravel, part of why we do this podcast, you do yours, I do mine, is because gravel racing is so interesting, and it's just been evolving so much in the past decade. It's fun to see sort of how all of this shakes out, and who knows, we'll look back on it like 20 years from now and either laugh at some of the ideas that we had, or be like, oh, that's why we did things then and it's totally different now. We'll see.
Are you one last question from my side? How do you see the Gravel Earth series? Like, do you see it like in comparison to Lifetime Grand Prix?
How do I see it? I mean, I think I was surprised at how many races they added and like made it bigger for 2025. I think it's sort of like they're throwing the net a little bit too wide, in my opinion, instead of not narrowing it, but like making it more achievable for people to go to more of them, I guess. I think it's still great and something cool for people to chase. Like, I think Stetna is going to do a lot more of it next year. But I think they all have their own thing. Like the Belgian Waffle Ride races have their own thing. Gravel Earth Series, the Grand Prix, like there's just so many different avenues that people can race now, and doing the UCI stuff and chasing that. They're just different ways to do it. I don't know if I could rank all of the series and like how people should do it, but I almost think that there's too much at the moment, and it sort of needs to narrow the focus a little bit for riders.
Yeah, it's almost like this. I expect consolidation in this market, but what Gravel Earth Series is doing, especially, I mean, very clearly they put a large focus on getting into the US and increasing the footprint there, so that and Stetina is a great get for them. No, I don't know any background information there, but whether he decided or was incentivized to focus more on that series, it definitely is pretty awesome for them, because he's one of the top high profile names in gravel, and then it's so much more accessible for US riders now as well to join the series. And because the format is different from Lifetime, you can pick a few races and do really good in them. You don't need to go to all the races except for the final where you then need to be to win it. So these are smart moves. I also like a lot that they put stage races in there as well, something that I would have liked from the Lifetime series as well, even though it's not what they do, but I think it makes sense to have this aspect of gravel racing in the series. So curious how it's going to resonate in the US, and I'm quite interested in what they are building as a second competitor, because to me, sadly or not sadly, who knows, but the UCI Gravel World Series is the weakest package. I mean, if I want to find out in prep for this, I wanted to find out who was ranking top in this series. So it's not a World Cup, it's a World Series. So there is not technically an overall winner, or you don't get world champion if you win this, but still you can the points. But to see who was the overall top dog, which was Peter Vakoc, by the way, you had to download a PDF. Mm-hmm. And I guess that says it all, no?
Yeah, but they just made that PDF for the World Championships for the starting order.
That's even worse.
Right. It was just an Instagram post, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the only reason. But no, I think that we can finish. Like, what I find interesting is that so many American events, which are also quite well established, are joining the Gravel Earth series.
Yeah,
and they're
I'm amazed.
And I'm really curious how that will evolve. I think what Lifetime Grand Prix does, in my opinion, is okay, and it's probably also the right way, because that's just their format, and they want to keep it like this, and that's fine. But the next step the Gravel Earth series has to take before people not coming anymore, especially the top athletes, they have to give prize money. So like what Lifetime Grand Prix starts to do now with some races giving prize money is a really important step. But you can't just like go into all these events not paying any prize money, but using the athletes as like a media outlet for your own sponsors, where you get money from as an organizer. And it's like, and also he's paying quite a lot of start fee, you know. I mean, what I pay during the year is quite insane just to participate in races, which is fine, you know. I mean, I know I want that these races are happening, but like this whole business concept around it, I think it has to evolve a bit more. And I think the riders should get at one point their fair share on this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. Because like for Lauf Gravel Worlds now and Rebecca's Private Idaho, my thought was like, why? What's in it to them to do? Like, do they think more people and more racers are chasing that? And then the next question is like, is there more money? No, not yet. So like you said, there needs to be a little bit more incentive for those things to maybe pan out the way that they wanted to.
But
for example, I'm coming to the US to Gravel Worlds, Lauf Gravel Worlds, because of the Gravel Earth series, because I just want to give it a try, you know, like the Gravel Earth series, and the gravel, all these Gravel Worlds and Gravel Earth makes me crazy. And the Lauf Gravel Worlds are one of the major events in their program, and they have a big prize purse, and they have actually a really interesting course. So I thought, all right, I just give it a try. But it's insane. But we will see how it's panning out, and how this series will develop.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, Amanda and Paul, and for all the prep that you invested in giving these awards out.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Amanda. See you somewhere in the States next year.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.